Hello there, it is 6 p.m. in London. This is The World Today. I'm Rich Preston. The Signal Gate saga continues as the publication involved publishes all attack plans discussed in the Yemen airstrike group chat, as the White House remains firm no classified information was disclosed.
We have said all along that no classified material was sent on this messaging thread. There were no locations, no sources or methods revealed, and there were certainly no war plans discussed.
Intelligence chiefs grilled by Congress over their involvement in the chat. Sudan's military leader declares Khartoum is free, saying the army has regained full control of the capital from its rival, the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces, in Sudan's ongoing civil war. President Zelensky arrives in Paris to discuss security guarantees for Ukraine. We're expecting to hear from him and President Macron shortly. Also coming up here on The World Today. And on your way, the Cotswold village putting restrictions on coaches to crack down on what they call invading tourists. Hello there and a very warm welcome to The World Today here on BBC News, an hour of international coverage. Now, it's the latest twist in a remarkable story out of the United States, a discussion amongst military and intelligence chiefs about plans to attack Houthi targets in Yemen taking place on the Signal messaging app, and in which a journalist was inadvertently added to the chat group. Okay, Barbara Platasha, Force in Port Sudan. Barbara, thank you very much. And there's much more on that very important story on the BBC News website. Still to come here on The World Today, Brazil's Supreme Court says there's enough evidence for the former right-wing president Jair Bolsonaro to stand trial for allegedly plotting a coup. And why a village in the English Cotswolds has announced restrictions on coaches after receiving huge numbers of visitors each year. Around the world and across the UK, this is The World Today on BBC News. Let's turn to Ukraine now, and President Zelensky is in Paris at the moment, where he's discussing security guarantees for his country with President Macron ahead of Thursday's summit with the so-called Coalition of the Willing. And we will continue to follow this story over the next few moments here. Do stick with us, don't go anywhere. I'll be back in a moment. You're with BBC News. Hello, this is BBC News. The latest headlines. The Signal Gate saga continues as the publication involved publishes all the attack plans which it saw discussed in the Yemen airstrike group chat, as the White House remains firm that no classified information was disclosed. Meanwhile, intelligence chiefs grilled by Congress over their involvement in the chat. Elsewhere, Sudan's military leader declares Khartoum is free, saying the army has regained full control of the capital from its rival, the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces, in Sudan's ongoing civil war. President Zelensky arrives in Paris to discuss security guarantees for Ukraine. Now, here in the UK, the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, has delivered her spring statement to the Commons, setting out a series of cuts in public spending, including more reforms to the main benefit, universal credit. An extra £2.2 billion will be spent on defence, with Ms Reeves telling MPs that the government had to act quickly in a changing world. Here's our political editor, Chris Mason. Bring you much more on that press conference and hopefully some clips of what the two leaders had to say in the next hour here on The World Today on BBC News. Don't go anywhere. I'll be back in just a jiffy. See you in a sec. Hello there, it is 7 p.m. here in London. This is The World Today with Rich Preston. The UK's 2025 growth estimate is halved as the Chancellor Rachel Reeves delivers her spring statement. She defends her welfare cuts, which risk putting 250,000 more people in poverty. The Signalgate saga continues. The Atlantic publishes all attack plans discussed in the Yemen airstrike group chat as the White House continues to say no classified information was disclosed.
We have said all along that no classified material was sent on this messaging thread. There were no locations, no sources or methods revealed, and there were certainly no war plans discussed.
President Macron hosts President Zelensky in Paris and pledges €2 billion in military support for Ukraine. Elsewhere, Sudan's military leader declares Khartoum is free, saying the army has regained full control of the capital from its rival, the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces, in Sudan's ongoing civil war. Also coming up on The World Today, we speak to the man who played golf for 382 days straight to complete the challenge of getting 18 pars. Hello there, welcome to The World Today, an hour of international news from the BBC. And we start this hour here in the UK, where the Chancellor Rachel Reeves has set out a series of changes to public spending in order to help balance the nation's finances. And you can get much more on the spring statement, including all the key points on our live page. You can find that on the BBC News website or, of course, the BBC News app. Still to come, here on The World Today, we'll have the latest from the US as the magazine, whose editor was let into a group chat where officials discussed attacks on Houthi targets in Yemen, publishes the full exchange of messages, and why a village in the English Cotswolds has announced restrictions on coaches after receiving huge numbers of visitors. Around the world and across the UK, this is The World Today on BBC News. Let's go to the US now, and The Atlantic magazine, whose editor was mistakenly added to a group chat in which senior officials discussed attacks on Yemen, has now published the full exchange of messages. I'll be back in a second. Do stick with us here on BBC News. Hello, this is BBC News, our latest headlines. The UK's 2025 growth estimate is halved as Chancellor Rachel Reeves delivers her spring statement. She defends her welfare cuts, which risk putting 250,000 more people in poverty. The Signalgate saga continues. The Atlantic magazine publishes all attack plans discussed in the Yemen airstrike group chat as the White House continues to say no classified information was released.
We have said all along that no classified material was sent on this messaging thread. There were no locations, no sources or methods revealed, and there were certainly no war plans discussed.
Elsewhere, Sudan's military leader declares that Khartoum is free, saying the army has regained full control of the capital from its rival, the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces. And President Macron hosts President Zelensky in Paris and pledges €2 billion in military support for Ukraine. Well, let's return to our main news from here in the UK this hour. And the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, has announced a number of public spending cuts, including reductions to welfare benefits and departmental spending in the government's spring statement. Around the world and across the UK, this is The World Today on BBC News. Hello, you're with BBC News. Let's go to the west of England now, and a village in the Cotswolds has announced restrictions on coaches after receiving huge numbers of visitors each year. The village of Bybury in Gloucestershire Cotswolds can sometimes see as many as 20,000 visitors in one weekend, and up to 50 coaches parking there a day. And speaking of animals that lurk in the deep, take a look away if you're scared of sharks. This is a rare endangered shark. It's been spotted off Rio's iconic Ipanema beach in Brazil. It's a mako shark, which is a species at risk from tuna fishing. If you're wondering who took the video, it was the scuba diver Andrew Macau, who said it was a real privilege. You're watching BBC News. Now, a man here has completed a challenge to get 18 pars, the number of shots a good golfer would normally take on a hole in a row. Now, that might not sound impressive to you, it does to me, but it comes after Tim Sudman set himself the challenge of playing golf every single day until he managed it. Tim, Nick and Benji, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. Have a very good evening.
Thank you for having us.
And before I go, just want to remind you of our top international story this hour, and the White House continuing to deny that any classified information was included in this Signal group chat. That comes after The Atlantic magazine, which had a journalist who was included in the group chat, has decided to publish the full conversation chain, saying it stands by its journalism. There is, of course, much more on that on the BBC News website, and coming up in the context with Kasia Madeira, who is here in the seat next. I'll be back same time tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Hello. Many parts of the UK had some fine afternoon sunshine with high pressure